Hi everyone, I'm Miss Noel with Palm Beach County 4-H, and today we're going to have some fun with chemistry. So we're going to talk about chemical reactions, and you're going to be able to do this experiment in your house with some materials that you can find in your medicine cabinet and even in your pantry. So the first material we're going to have is just regular ordinary dish soap. Whatever you have is fine. We have a packet of yeast. This is the yeast that you would use to make bread, in a 1/4 cup of some warm water. You don't want it to be cold, you don't want it to be boiling. Warm is perfect. We have a 1/2 cup of hydrogen peroxide. This is your basic peroxide that you have in your medicine cabinet. And some general food coloring. Now the food coloring isn't required, but it is something that makes it a little bit more fun. So if you have it, great. If not, don't worry about it. All right, so before we get started, we're gonna make sure that we're taking care of our #1 priority, and that is safety. So as you can see, I've already got my hair pulled back, so we wanna make sure my hair's out of the way. We don't want our chemical reaction to mix with our hair. I'm also going to put on my handy dandy safety goggles. Anytime you do chemistry or any sort of reactionary experiment, you want to make sure that you're being safe, and safety goggles are a very important step. Okay, so safety goggles on. Now we're ready for some chemistry. All right, so I'm going to start with my hydrogen peroxide. I have an ordinary soda bottle here with a funnel to make pouring the hydrogen peroxide in a little easier, less spillage. And I also have a metal pan here. This is going to catch our fizzy foam and create less of a mess later. You can use any pan you have. A cookie sheet that has some high sides works good as well. All right, so I'm going to pour in my 1/2 cup of hydrogen peroxide. And the chemical formula for hydrogen peroxide is H for hydrogen, 2, because there's 2 molecules of hydrogen, O for oxygen, 2, because there's 2 molecules of oxygen. And that's important, and we'll get back to that reasoning why. The next thing I'm going to do is add a couple drops of my food coloring. And you can add as much or as little as you want. Now I'm going to remove my funnel. I'm going to put it in the sink so I don't make a mess. And also, make sure that you do this with mom and dad, or aunties and uncles, or grandma and grandpa, or your babysitter. We want to make sure that you're not doing this by yourself, because the last thing we want is mom and dad or somebody to walk into the kitchen and you've got colored fizzy foam all over the place. So keep that in mind too. All right, so now I'm going to add a little drizzle of our dish soap. Give that a little bit of a mix. I'm going to put my funnel back in so we can add our yeast. So our yeast is mixed with a little bit of warm water. And right now, our liquids are just hanging out in there, no reactions happening. They're just sort of intermixing, just like you would have any other item on the cabinet or in the kitchen. So now we're gonna add our yeast, which is actually our catalyst. So a catalyst is a mixture that speeds up a reaction, a chemical reaction. So let's add it and see what happens. And you wanna dump it all in fast. Woo, fizzy foam. So what happened? So our hydrogen peroxide, when we added the yeast, broke down those molecules. So now we have water, which is H2O, similar to H2O2, but we lost an oxygen molecule, and our oxygen. So our oxygen is now combining, that single molecule of oxygen is combining with our dish soap to make all these fun bubbles and give us this reaction. It's also what we call an exothermic reaction. So if I touch my fizzy foam or I touch my bottle, you'll notice it's warm. So that catalyst chemical reaction actually gives off heat. So when you give it a feel, you'll notice the temperature difference. So we had a lot of fun with that chemical reaction, but we're gonna up the stakes a little bit. So the peroxide that we used in our first test was about 3% hydrogen peroxide. To see what happens when we add a little bit more for the chemical reaction to take place, we're actually going to use about 8% hydrogen peroxide. Now this is going to get a little bit different, and you may see some changes, so keep an eye out. Again, I got my safety goggles on, my hair's pulled back, and we're ready to go. So we're going to start with our 8% hydrogen peroxide into our funnel. Now I'm going to use green this time because we're 4-H, and why not? Right, and we're going to again add a little drizzle of dish soap, and we're going to give that a swirl. Again, we've got our 8, so we can already see there's a little bit more effervescence, a little bit more bubbles happening. Let's see what happens when we add our yeast this time. All right, and watch carefully. I want you to see if you can tell a difference between the reaction from the blue foam to our green foam. Ready? I'm gonna make sure that I kind of pull back quickly because we don't want anything flying up at me. Ready? Here we go. Look at it go. So definitely more of a reaction. We've got a lot more of a actually structured kind of foam. It actually looks like a little worm oozing out of our bottle. I'm not going to touch it because we have a higher level peroxide, but you can actually feel the heat coming off of our foam. The reaction is greater, and that's just a little bit of chemistry you can do at home to learn about catalysts and a little bit of chemical reaction. We hope you had fun with us, and we hope you'll join us next time. We'll see you soon. Thank you.